Hello and welcome back to another episode of Books I Can't Recommend Enough and or Change the Way I See the World. Today, as promised, it's been a while, I apologize, but life has been very pushy in the last few months. And yeah, but I decided I wanted to get back into this whole review process. And as promised in the last little trailer, today I'm talking about The Three-Body Problem by Cixian Liu. And I know I'm mangling that, so please be gentle. And yeah, and I specifically chose this because it's a relatively recent read from my science fiction bookshelf. And of course, it is deservedly become very popular. It was been widely circulated outside of China and translated into many different languages. And for us lonely Westerners, right, we tend to think of science fiction as an English language kind of thing, right? Very European, very American. Yeah, and in fact, it is really refreshing to see the futurism writing genres in other nations there. Afrofuturism is one really been learning a lot about in the last little while, and I'm going to have some reviews from various African science fiction authors. In any case, today I definitely wanted to come back with Three-Body Problem. It is a very good read. It's lengthy, and well, my wife and I both read this, and she had a few critical notes there about the structure of it and sort of how it was presented. And I thought, well, it's true enough. It's like it does take a while to really truly reveal what the sort of the inciting event of all this really is. And of course, it's part of a trilogy, so this book is setting up future books, and you do have to read all the way to the end to really get a full sense of where is he going with this. But yeah, in the first place, he does manage to set things up pretty succinctly, and it is a really quite adventurous read. So obviously, I want to avoid any spoilers, but to give you a rundown of what to expect in it and why I personally liked it. For one, it's dark. That's sort of a take it or leave it kind of thing, but it is dark, it's gritty, and it sort of kicks off with two parallel narratives here, one which takes place in China during the 1960s, during the Cultural Revolution, and shortly thereafter, getting into the post-Mao years, and how that had a huge effect on Chinese society and the sciences, and of course on some of the main characters in it. And then you've got the current timeline, which is much more closer to the present, in which a detective is investigating a string of very unusual suicides, and how and why these converge. As I said, you really have to get to the ending to figure out exactly how these converge, but yeah, it is worth the ride. And in the midst of all that, there is this a rather important thread in there where online gamers, they're playing this game, which is very interesting, and it definitely borrows elements from Chinese history in it, but it's very much related to the whole plot, which, of course, for those who haven't read it, yeah, it comes down to extraterrestrial intelligence. And the three-body problem, I don't think I'm giving too much away, but it refers to the neighboring star system of Alpha Centauri. And that's composed of a binary, two stars there, one of which is sun-like, another is smaller, and it's got a third companion, Proxima Centauri, a red dwarf. And astronomers do consider that part of the same system. Many do, I should say. I think there are some dissenting voices there. But their proximity and how they influence each other has led many to consider this a trinary system. So it's like all of these stars could have their own planets, but the orbital mechanics would be complicated by the fact that you've got all these bodies there, and the three-body problem is a classical problem in physics. If you've got two bodies in the orbital dance, their gravity influences each other. You can figure that out without much trouble, but introduce a third body into that, and calculations become very, very difficult. And yeah, so for any planets orbiting in a trinary system, life is going to be very interesting over long periods of time. And so there's a lot of speculation about how intelligent life, if it did in fact exist in a trinary system, the kind of challenges that would pose. And speaking personally, there was a lot about this book that really just appealed to me hugely. The historical aspect of it, China's Cultural Revolution, major episode in global history and Chinese history, and so they show that taking place. And one of the main characters, they live through that. They witness how, of course, the Cultural Revolution, for those who are not familiar, it was shortly after Mao and his Red Brigades, they took power in China in 1948. By the 60s, they launched what was referred to as the Cultural Revolution. It was similar to what happened in the Soviet Union, and it was basically an attempt to overhaul society, to install Marxist-Leninist principles or Maoist principles in this case, his own, variation on Marxist-Leninism. Basically tried to rebuild culture in their image, right? In the Marxist image, in the revolutionary communist image, in the leader's image. And so from that came a very, very prominent cult of personality where basically people were denounced constantly by their fellow citizens who were caught up in revolutionary fervor. And yeah, basically anyone accused, and this is something that was rather particular to China. You also saw this happening in Cambodia under Pol Pot, to a lesser extent in Vietnam. But that was a little bit more particular. It had to do with the war, the division there. But yeah, the idea of the Cultural Revolution is you're basically eliminating anything you see as bourgeois, anything of the old guard, the old system. And so in China, it did involve a lot of purging of what were seen as Western elements. And so that meant, yeah, any science that was not approved by the state, anything that contradicted the principles of Marxism. So yeah, basically, if the party said something's bad, there were no shortage of people willing to go find examples of it and stamp it out. So millions were accused, denounced, murdered. It was a very, very brutal period with such terrible excess and so forth that, much like Stalin and his Soviet version thereof, Mao then stepped in and said, "Oh, this has all gotten out of hand, and I blame it on the party members and other ideologues and so forth around here. I'm taking charge again," which, of course, was complete bullshit. Basically, the leader tries to say, you're all guilty of excesses, and I didn't sign off on this. I just let it happen. And so now I'm righting the ship. We're pulling things back from all this radical leftist stuff and imposing a more rightist agenda. Yeah, it's one of many reasons why your classical communists and classical Marxists will say that the Soviet experiment and the Chinese experiment, any attempt to realize Marxist principles in practice, were far more akin to fascism than socialism, anything that actually had emerged from the right, because of this level of authoritarianism and hypocrisy that was going on there. But yeah, as the saying goes, the only people who think capitalists are rational are communists. Well, yes, communists and fascists will constantly accuse each other of of usurping or betraying their principles, right? But yeah, in the end, it was all just a totalitarian experiment. Anyway, so that is the beginning of it, and then, of course, they move into the post-Mao era, in which people who participated in all these purges were generally shuffled off to the middle of nowhere and sentenced to doing back-breaking labor because we don't want you around here. And, yeah, one of the main characters is left so bitter and scarred by this that they do something that helps incite the main plot. And also, there's a lot of talk of China's post-Mao experiments in the field of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And that's where things really get going. And it's like, yeah, much like the Soviets, it was believed that if extraterrestrial intelligent life is out there, and we've got plenty of reasons to think that there are, we should be looking for it. We should be prepared to make contact, because better us than them, the West. Better. And of course, yeah, in the West, the feeling was much the same. We don't want the communists making first contact. We can't have them speaking for humanity. We can't have them talking to an advanced species that could offer us a technological advantage or something like that. Yeah. And as to how that relates to why scientists are killing themselves in the modern day, specifically physicists and people who are engaged in all kinds of research that goes that incorporates, say, nanotechnology, nanoassembly, but also physics that go beyond the standard model, right? Figuring out a grand unifying theory. All this like next generation research that could produce the next really great breakthroughs. It's basically hit a wall and no one knows why. And so physicists are killing themselves. And it's like, what is going on there? And how does that relate to this? And in between it all, this strange video game. And to give you just one hint there, it's like, yeah, it's set in ancient China. It's got all these sort of the landmarks of that. But the thing of it is that people need to figure out how to survive, how to keep their civilization alive before this cyclical process repeats itself there, whereby, due to the three-body problem, the orbit of the suns, everybody dies. They become desiccated and die. And it's like, oh, now the game's done. You can try again. And it's like over time, people are getting further and further along. And of course, the challenge, it's so difficult. But yeah, it's like slowly but surely through this game, the truth, the real essence, the driving thing behind the whole plot is revealed. And so, yeah, it's quite interesting that way. And I do encourage people to read it with, of course, the warning and the caveat that, yeah, you really do have to wait till the last few chapters before all the pieces are presented and you know what's going to come next. I started reading the second one called The Dark Forest. And this is another reason why I'm loving this series. Yes, I'm doing very little recreational reading these days, again, because life and, well, my day job consists of reading all day and writing all day, and I'm sure I've said before, but I have this theory that the brain has sort of a preset word limit. So whether you are generating words or absorbing words, it's like that's drawing energy from the same parts of your brain, and at a certain point you kind of max out. And at that point it's like, I can't write another word, I can't read another word, I just want to go to bed, okay? Or watch something on television that's semi-stimulating, but not too stimulating. Anyway, so yeah, I'm working my way. That's my way of saying I've been slowly working my way through book 2 and a few others besides. I tend to start books too often. But the second installment in the series, called The Dark Forest, it actually spawned the author himself. He spawned a proposed resolution to the Fermi paradox. And I, of course, will be getting into this later if I ever finish the second book. Exploring that theory, but it's really quite interesting. It does have a few holes, which I actually addressed this when talking about this very theory in my podcast series. But the dark forest hypothesis states that the cosmos is essentially a dark forest. We are sort of groping our way around. We are unaware of what else is out there. It's a very apt metaphor, And and we are wary about broadcasting our existence, which would be tantamount to lighting a torch or turning on a flashlight. We're very wary about doing that because that would give away our position to potential predators. And it's like, okay, so we're living in this sort of, we're wondering what's out there, but we're afraid to make the first move and call out and say hello to the cosmos, because we're afraid who might hear us. And this is something that all other intelligent life forms, they share that paranoia, hence why we're not hearing from anybody, because nobody's broadcasting. Now, that is not entirely true. There have been attempts to broadcast messages to space, and there's even a name for it now. It's called messaging extraterrestrial intelligence, or METI, which sets it apart for the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI. And other terms that had been used in the past was like active SETI, right? We are looking, but we're doing it in an active way by broadcasting, versus passive SETI, where you're just listening. But nowadays, the term METI has caught on because, it very much distinguishes itself from the traditional approach. Anyway, so while attempts have been made, one can certainly see the logic in what the author here, Cixian Liu, is saying, because all of our SETI research, right? The vast majority of our work and our efforts have fallen into the traditional SETI or passive SETI category. Very few attempts have been made to message, and it has become a very controversial subject too, right? If anybody messages, they are essentially speaking for all of humanity, and they are essentially taking all the risks. And they're doing that on behalf of all of us, so what right do they have? And so that's also the reason why any and all attempts that have been made were made many decades ago, when the field of SETI was still young. Another thing that he poses there is that, yes, species are also subject to two main things: technological advancement, which is very, very rapid and makes the idea of traversing cosmic distances to attack someone completely impractical, right? Relativity imposes strict limits on how fast you can realistically expect to go. So it's like even a neighboring star like Alpha Centauri and Proxima Centauri, that trinary system, at roughly 4.25 light years away. The best we could hope for right now, as projects like Breakthrough Starshot or Swarming Proxima Centauri is another one. These all involve light sails. So basically solar sails, they reflect light and that propels them, and you use focused energy, directed energy lasers to accelerate them. And you can make these go really, really fast because they weigh very, very little. Theoretically, it is believed that they could accelerate these vehicles up to 20% the speed of light. But, of course, it's like, well, reconfigure all this for sending a big flotilla of ships with troops and weapons and all that stuff. And it's like the amount of energy you would need to generate in order to go even a small fraction, 10% the speed of light. It's tremendous. It's humongous. So if you're an advanced species and you have that ability, okay, we built a fleet, we can go 10% the speed of light, go next door. It's like, well, it's going to take them, 42 and a half years, give or take, to get there at maximum speed. And realistically, going interstellar distances is more likely to take centuries. So by the time you get there, your fleet, which left with, say, technology at this stage of development, you're now getting there with that same technology. Whereas, when you left, the civilization was down here in terms of the development. They couldn't possibly fight you. But now they've had about 4 centuries or more to catch up. They've skyrocketed past you. So yeah, these come up in the course of the series, right? And how they will ultimately affect how civilizations will react to the realization or discovery that somebody else is out there. And are they a threat? We don't know, right? We don't know if they're malevolent or kind, and communication is very, very, very difficult because the time it takes to just beam messages back and forth, even to the nearest stars. It's a many-year time lag, and in that time, there is what Liu called chains of suspicion, right? It's like while we're waiting to hear messages back and forth, our minds are conjuring up all kinds of possibilities. We don't know if they're a threat, therefore we feel like, oh, maybe we should prepare for that. Maybe we should strike first, even. Maybe we should assume they're a threat. Meanwhile, we also realize, oh, crap, they're probably thinking the same thing. Even if they are benevolent, they may be afraid and they may attack us out of self-preservation. So, of course, it's just, yeah, the paranoia just builds like that. And, yeah. So it is a very, very interesting investigation of, yeah, the possibilities and speculation about intelligent life and how humanity would react to it, how it would react to us, especially if we have something they want. It's another hint. Won't go into that at all there. And yeah, there is also, I should mention, there is a very good, very faithful miniseries that was produced in China. I have yet to get through that. I started watching it, and then, again, couldn't really find much time. But yeah, what I saw was really impressive, and I've heard nothing but rave reviews from friends and colleagues, like highly respected ones who know about this stuff. And yeah, and they too, having read the books, they've watched the miniseries and thought, oh, it's very true to the book, which, it's kind of rare. And so, yeah, they are adapting the whole series now, the whole trilogy. And so it's definitely worth checking out. And it won a Hugo Award. It's internationally recognized, and the author himself has received a lot of accolades and props from science fiction fans all over the world. And yeah, as I said, it's dark and it's gritty. He does come at this from the perspective of someone who would perceive extraterrestrial intelligence to be just as ruthless, brutal, and as humanity is, and that, yeah, the lived experience of someone who witnessed China's Cultural Revolution and has witnessed everything that's happened since. Yeah, it's like there's a sense of cynicism to it, realism too, and yeah, I mean, but that only really, I think, makes it more interesting, right? Appreciating the perspective of another and how they kind of view the cosmos and human nature and intelligence in general in dark terms. Ooh. So definitely worth checking out. And in the coming weeks, possibly months, I hope to also tackle, there was a number of books I realized that I hadn't got to yet that I really should, including The Man in the High Castle, which has also been adapted into a miniseries recently, which is great because this is considered very much a classic. It's also a Hugo Award winner by Philip K. Dick, and it's considered one of his better works. It's an alternate history book that looks at what if the Allies had lost World War II, and a future where, in fact, yeah, the world has been divided among the fascist superpowers, and there are, of course, token few independent states and realms that have been allowed to carry on and exist. There's also Kim Stanley Robinson's Aurora, a very, very dense as anything he's ever written there. The guy really is very good at spinning yarn and laying on the spoken word. Just, yeah, very dense and detailed look at generation ships and attempts to settle in other star systems on exoplanets and the perils involved in that. And that one, too, also raises another Fermi paradox-related thing there. Also, among my must-reads and very influential reads is Age of Extremes by Eric Hobsbawm, a famous Marxist philosopher and scholar and historian. And yeah, that was something I did not know about him going in, but in the course of reading this, it's like, oh, yep, yeah, you can spot it pretty early on if you're looking. And that book is one of many that I got in Ottawa from Octopus Books. To that there, it nestled in the glebe, and it is a independent bookstore, very avant-garde, very leftist. I really like that place. I bought several books there that I hope to bring up too, because yeah, they're very good at stocking all the types of books that would change the way you see the world. And last but not least, The Greening of Mars by James Lovelock, the one of two people who coined the Gaia hypothesis, the idea that ecological systems are all part of one large system, planet Earth being the example here, of course, how all activity in there, where you have organic and inorganic elements working together to produce life, and life itself, which is maintaining and promoting the conditions to allow for other life, and how this is all self-sustaining and self-perpetuating, and how you can throw it off if you muck up the works enough. Yes, James Lovelock was a NASA scientist and engineer and inventor, and it was all the climate modeling that he was helping to do for other planets in the solar system that led to the breakthrough that he had with a colleague to basically understanding Earth's dynamic systems and how precious they were. And yeah, he was a major figure in the environmentalist movement, and helped really pioneer our understanding of climate change today. Anyway, he wrote a very seminal book on how we could terraform Mars to make it livable. The ecological knowledge that we've gained from studying Earth systems applied to another planet, and how those in turn will affect our efforts to preserve and sustain our ecology back here at home. And yeah, it's one of many studies, essays, papers that were written on the subject, but he tackled it from a fiction point of view, and that's what made it really quite good and influential and accessible. Yeah, far more so than a lot of papers written on the subject. So that's a taste of what's to come in my reviews, and well, good to be back. And I hope you like the new office too. It's basically our sunroom, which I've converted into a little uh, corner office. And yeah, well, this is the background you'll be seeing from now on, so get used to that, I guess. All right, thank you, and hope to see you next time.